Today on the Sound Seat, we sit down with one of South Africa's most influential creative leaders, Sbu Sithole. As the co-founder and chief creative officer of The Odd Number, Sbu has been at the forefront of telling authentic African stories through bold and meaningful campaigns. And under his leadership, The Odd Number has grown into a powerhouse agency known for its culturally resonant work and creative excellence. Beyond his role in shaping brands, Sbu has also a vital role in nurturing the industry itself, serving as the chairman of the Luries. So we welcome you, and we're very excited to chat about all your knowledge and amazingness.
Bless you.
All right, let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
What inspired you to co-found The Odd Number, and what vision did you set out with when starting the agency?
Wow. What? To start The Odd Number, I always wanted to start an agency. From high school, I wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And after I'd studied advertising at Red and Yellow, I had spoken to a lecturer of mine, and I said, "How do you go about starting an agency?" And he said, "No, well, instead of starting an agency now, just out of school, why not go and work for other agencies?" So then I started a whole journey of kind of going into different agencies and understanding how they work. And then, my last stint was at Ogilvy for about 3 years. And then I realized, I'm actually ready. I think I was about 33 at the time. And I was like, I think I'm ready for it. And I think the vision really was, we were getting busier and busier, at least I was, at the time at Ogilvy. And I could see there was a little bit of a gap when it came to sort of making work for the mass market, but with an idea.
Yeah.
We used to call it, there used to be this thing of just Apple V it, which was Apple Vernacket.
Yeah.
And that it just put it a and it's good. It's a good ad for blacks. But I think, the thinking was that, you can actually make some really resonant work with great ideas that appeal to the fabric of our society.
Yeah. Just for those that don't know your journey, and I mean, you talk about starting in the agencies, where did you start and what sort of roles did you play before starting your own agency?
Oh, so I started at FCB, which
Okay.
is amazing because FCB, you get an opportunity to work on really big brands, or at least I got an opportunity to work on big brands. I think my first brief, we shot a TV ad, and I was like, super stoked. Then I went to Grey, which is a smaller agency, and their Grey was really honing my art direction skill. I'd followed a creative director of mine, which I admire quite a bit. His name is Mike Barnwell. And so there was just about learning the craft. From Grey, I went to TBWA. TBWA was awesome because, we got to now kind of be a little bit more senior and run accounts. And also I just love Hunt Lascaris and the story behind it, the independence. I mean, at the time there were TBWA, but I think the legacy of Hunt Lascaris is still, running through the building. And then from Hunt I went to Joe Public, which was awesome as well. Again, there it was the opportunity to work with Pepe Marais and Toli and Gareth Leck and guys that actually ran their own agency. And I think that's where the bug really bit.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went to Ogilvy. And Ogilvy was really a chance to become a creative director, proper creative director, work on big brands, almost run a little agency within an agency. And then The Odd Number came knocking.
Amazing. So you chat about Apple V. How do you ensure cultural nuance and emotional resonance in your creative process? Because now, I mean, you've started your own agency. You want that to be the forefront of it and no longer do Apple V.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with not only your own lived reality and making sure we bring that to the table as in mine, but also helping others find their own voices. So since we started The Odd Number, it's always been about nurturing young talent, particularly Black talent, helping them find their voice, helping them understand what an idea is. That there's a whole training process that happens, which wasn't really happening in the industry when I came in. So it's getting the guys to be brave enough to bring their lived realities to the table, and then being honest enough to kind of give feedback and also to carry that idea or package that idea for a client. So it's really that. I think it's just looking for that nuance, looking for that. And you know what? The beauty about creative is that we always in search for new ideas. So when something sounds too familiar, then it's not really a new idea.
Yeah.
So I guess I've always been in search of something that's a little bit more left field, a little bit more nuanced, in the fabric of, I guess, whoever that creative is.
Yeah. And I mean, you're at the top of the odd number. How does it work in the odd number in terms of people bringing ideas? How involved are you?
Yeah.
Do you sit and have the final say? Do you sit and brainstorm with your team? Just give us a little bit of an idea about how it works actually in the odd number.
It's actually quite loose. So it's all of the above. So for instance, I'm working on a campaign now where I'm writing scripts. But oftentimes there is I guess the more formal agency structure of junior creative, midway, seniors. What I do often is we do proactive sessions. So we have what we call Creative Fridays. Creative Fridays are essentially where guys can kick around and throw ideas at us, and we kind of work through them, or briefs that they're working on. If they're struggling with a certain brief, then the whole team gets together and we kick it around, and we try and find a solution. So it's hands-on in terms of training and learning, and I think the most valuable thing I can give my team is my time. So I try and give as much time as possible to just, I guess, how we review, how we kick ideas around. I'm not afraid to throw ideas on the table, because I think also for me to keep sharp as a creative, I need to be thinking creatively as well, not just playing a management role. So yeah, it's a little bit, it's quite loose and quite collaborative. But I think it works quite nicely.
And I mean, do you have your set brands that you're working with and you're only coming up with ideas for them? Or do you sit around and go, I came up with this idea, it would be so brilliant for this brand, and you approach that brand? I mean, I know that certain brands are with different agencies, but I mean, is there that point where you're like, oh, this would be so good for this brand?
There's always that. But you're right. It becomes very tricky because, obviously brands are with other agencies. So selling that through, and there's all sorts of contractual issues. So we tend to keep our thinking to our clients, unless, of course, it's a pro bono, sort of NGO or that sort of thing. That tends to be maybe a lot easier to sell through. But generally, we keep it to our brands in our stable, It's also I think it's also the value add for our own clients, for us to be constantly thinking about how to make them better and how to make them cut through, and that sort of thing.
And I suppose if you've got this idea for one brand, you can like tweak it for your own brand, for instance.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, when you've got a human truth that works for another brand, there's no reason you can't use that same insight and transpose it to another brand. Ideally though, brands have strategies, brands have a vibe, or a style, so it shouldn't be that easy to just take an idea and plonk it onto another brand, because that means it's an idea that works for the sector as opposed to that particular brand. You know what I mean? Like, brands have particular voices, so you also got to honor that in the process.
Tell us a little bit about how sound plays a role in the odd number, and when it comes to music as well as like voiceovers, etc. How important is it for you? Is it from the beginning? Is it like halfway through the process? Is it sort of at the end?
So sound for me is extremely important. I mean, I do voiceovers. So since I started in the industry, doing voiceovers, radio ads, I mean, that's kind of my first love, I guess, as a medium, is radio. So sound has played a huge role in I guess the odd numbers even come up. I think if you look at most of the awards we've won have been audio related. So where does it come in the process? I think I always, when we present, or when guys come with ads, it's always important to know what kind of sonics you're going for, right? When it comes to when you're thinking about an ad, because I often go, what happens is at the end of the process, when you're in the recording, you end up doing the fallback plan, like the fallback voiceover, the fallback library music, but you haven't really thought out what's the sound bed, what's the sound design, What's the voice?
Yeah.
Who's the voice? And why? And is it just going to sound like every other voice? That's, what makes it cut through. So sound plays a huge role. And I think also in film. So it's just what we try and stay away from is the general tropes of how we treat sound. We try and do something a little bit more surprising, sometimes to our detriment because people just won't get it.
Yeah.
But I think it's always important to keep trying.
And I mean, obviously, South Africa is extremely important to the Odd Number. How important is South African music to the Odd Number? How difficult is it to sell to a brand that lets keep the music like truly South African?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we've had that struggle before. We tried to sell through a song for Game. But it was our fault because we had in the pitch we had sold this hip hop track from America, and it was all about having Game and so on. And then it turned out we couldn't get that song.
Yeah.
And I think it forced us to go local. But we looked for tracks and eventually came up with this beautiful track by Rex Rabanye. And we now selling that through was hard.
Yeah.
It was very difficult because different vibe. Didn't really understand where it was coming from. It didn't have any lyrics. But I was like, this is an anthem. This is a South African anthem. Trust me, it's gonna work. And eventually there was trust. We sold it through, and it became Game's anthem for like 2 years.
Amazing.
And it's interesting because I think there's so many of those gems around, where we out here paying millions for foreign tracks, but there's actually so many local anthemics that we almost often look over.
Yeah.
So that was a big lesson for us as well.
And I think it's also difficult once you put that big track, that international track on the table.
Oh yeah,
they've heard it
around,
and then they're like, but
no,
what are you saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is difficult. And I think, listen, it does take a bit of a brave client. I think it does take them taking the track and going and testing it elsewhere to just because if you don't know, you don't know sometimes, and sometimes maybe the agency is just kind of just trying to sell you something to get out of to reach the deadline, so but yeah, I mean, trust has a lot to do with it. I knew instinctively that track would work, and it did, which is cool.
That's great. In your role as chairperson of the Loeries, what shifts have you noticed in the quality and themes of the work being submitted over the past few years?
Themes. So, I mean, I think obviously there was a big swing for some time on purpose-driven work. I love purpose-driven work. What happened was it seemed that's what everyone was starting to do. The swing now feels like the work's becoming more brand orientated, more sort of, I guess, the essence of advertising. Of course, technology's played a huge role in kind of opening up various categories to enter. We've just launched a new category for B2B, for instance, which was never there.
What is B2B?
B2B is business to business marketing. So it's not business to consumer, it's business to business.
Right.
Which is a little bit more kind of I guess more technical than sort of B2C. So I guess there's been an expanding with all the tools available to us, obviously with AI, now you're going to get bespoke AI categories. So it's obviously made broadened, I guess, the various ways to enter, which is great.
Yeah.
Which is really awesome.
And where do you find that line of doing creative work and then having something like AI and people just wanting to use AI so they can win an award?
Yeah, I think that happens all the time where people are just jumping on some sort of trend to win an award. And I think as a judge, you have to ask yourself, what's the idea at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Is this a novel idea, or is this just relying on the tech?
Yeah.
So you've got to differentiate. At the end of the day, we're storytellers. We tell stories on behalf of brands. and we are attracting a particular consumer, and does it hit the spot, or is it just on trend?
Yeah.
And I think, and from my experience, just even having judged overseas, it does tend to turn a room of judges off when it feels like this is just jumping on a bandwagon.
Yeah.
Judges are very skeptical when it comes to just trends versus actual powerful ideas.
Yeah.
And you see it in the work. Like you
Mhm.
can see when an idea is really, really strong.
Yeah.
Whether there's AI involved or not, it's
Yeah.
a powerful piece of work. So yeah.
Absolutely. How do award shows like the Loeries help shape and elevate the industry? And why are they important beyond just recognition?
Well, for us, our work is our marketing. When we started the Odd Number, um, a piece of advice I got from Gareth Leck, and I think it was the first year, and he was like, "Dude, just win awards, just win awards, and that's how you'll get your name out there." And we did that, and then it's evolved from being just, I guess, how we even market ourselves through our work, but to us, I guess, challenging ourselves to be creatively excellent in the building. So what we want creatives pushing themselves to reach a level of creative excellence. And fortunately or unfortunately for some, award shows do set the benchmark for the quality and level of creative that's in the industry. You get to, when you go to Loeries or you go to Cannes or you go anywhere, you look at that work, you start to see sort of a little bit of a North Star of, okay, this is the level that I need to be competing at. This is the level. This is where other brands are taking it. They also help from clients. So if clients are watching and what's happening in the world, the stuff that Burger King's doing, whoever is doing, I guess it might encourage them to be a little bit braver as well in their thinking, and a little bit more innovative. So I think awards encourage innovation and creative excellence ultimately.
I was going to ask you about the braveness of brands, because sometimes, and I found that not only in advertising but in TV and radio, etc., everything has become very safe.
Yeah.
Very scared to push boundaries. How your job as an agency, how difficult is it to try and convince brands to do something?
It's very difficult. I think it varies. I tend to think of brands as more the marketers. So it's the marketers that you actually work with on those brands. And it's the relationship that you have with those marketers that'll yield the results that you want, right?
Yeah.
You can work on a fantastic brand, but not with a great marketer, and just not hit the mark. So I think it's with the people you work with. I think it's the relationship that you have. And I also think a lot goes into the strategies of these brands. It all starts with the initial thinking around what strategically, where do we want to go, and agreeing on that. And if we agree that we need to go a bit brave, we need to cut through this clutter. We know what your competitors are doing, and we don't want to do the same thing. We see the tropes of this industry. We want to break those tropes. If we're all nodding that whole time, then there's no reason the creative should come back and just do the same thing that you said we don't want to do. So strategy plays a huge part in at least setting the playing field for coming back with great ideas.
Brilliant. What advice would you give to young creatives who want to tell meaningful stories but often face commercial or structural limitations?
Commercial or structural limitations like what?
So I'm just saying, like, as we've just chatted about, that brands are trying to be safer, etc. So in terms of, let's say, for instance, that there are these structures in terms of agency, etc., etc. So how does, like, an upcoming person, like, really push to be able to tell that story that they want to tell?
It's a tricky one. I mean, it's a bit broad. If they're a creative in advertising, then I would firstly pursue the agencies. So identify the kind of agencies that are telling the stories that you would be interested in telling, because not every agency is the same, or prioritizes the same things. So I think if you have a particular voice or style or a way of thinking, I think if you study what's happening in the industry and the various agencies and what they offer, that's a start. So so identify where you could find your voice,
Yeah.
and then identify who you could work for to help you find that voice. So, like I said in my story earlier on, I left one agency to go to another just to work for a particular art director, CD.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes you're not just working for agencies, you're working for the people in there who can actually help you grow that skill. So, if you have the right mentor or the right creative director, that's half the job done.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's great advice for people that are really looking to see how to break into this industry.
100%. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about any mistake that you have made, because mistakes is actually, how we learn. But is
Yeah.
there a particular mistake that you remember making that sort of either changed the trajectory or really influenced how you then did work?
Mistake. It's a tough question. I feel like I make mistakes all the time. I think, yeah. Nothing comes to mind right now, but I think mistakes happen all the time. I think a lot of the time maybe it's involving people.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the wrong people that are in the team that you've hired and you didn't really think about it as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, sometimes it's in how you manage people. One thing I've learned over time is, particularly creatives. I mean, creatives are highly sensitive souls, and you need to have quite a dynamic way of leading creatives.
Yeah.
It's not just a one size fits all.
Yeah.
So maybe there's been some mistakes on that end. I think as a business as well. Financially, I think it took us a while to find our feet financially. I think there was a time when, we had like 6 months runway, and we were going to be done, and it was a hard reality.
Yeah.
And we had to like fix quite a few things because we were just not managing ourselves as well as we should have. So that was huge. That was painful. That led to some retrenchments as well. So because we're just not keeping an eye on how we're managing ourselves financially.
Yeah.
So that hurt, and we promised we'd never find ourselves there again. And I think what happened then is we decided, with all those sort of mistakes in the running of the business, I think we decided at the time to build ourselves an exco team, which comprises of our CFO, Kola, my partner, who's and CEO, our ECD. So it's just basically top line management. But not only that, we built an Manco team. So it's a management committee. So those two structures helped us get sort of the best people invest in the best people at the top, so that they can also help us watch for our blind spots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. We were chatting earlier, just off air, but about that fine line between free speech
Mhm.
and just crossing over that line where you actually hurting someone or offending someone.
Yeah.
How do you manage that with being telling your stories, being forward thinking, looking at the landscape that's in South Africa?
Yeah.
I often find that as storytellers, as broadcasters, as podcasters, etc., we have this amazing aspect of free speech, but we do have we should be looking at where we are in this country, and I just wanted to find out how, like, do you sit down and analyze every single aspect of an idea to make sure that you're not crossing that line?
Yes, and no. I think, a lot of the time you're learning as you go. I must be honest. Like, it's hard to know what will offend people,
Yeah.
because people are hyper unique, and something that offends me might not offend
Yeah.
someone else. So, that we navigate kind of as we go. Of course, we have to be hypersensitive. That stereotypes and um, uh, gender sort of stereotyping and that sort of thing. Like, we have to be quite
Yeah.
conscientious. And also brands have their own styles and ways. So, for instance, banks aren't going to be as, I guess, hyper provocative or offensive as
Yeah.
maybe another brand that's more that way inclined. So, like I say, I think it's about the team around you. It's about having honest conversations. It's also about testing sometimes, work. Yeah, and I guess the bravery is to also know that if you get it wrong, you can fix it
Yeah.
as soon as possible. Yeah.
As a second last question, as an agency, just in terms of how it all works, obviously you're working together with the brand, you put out a pitch for directors, etc. How do you choose a director out of the three that you've put this pitch out to?
That's an interesting question, and I think that again that varies depending on what the outcomes you're looking for. So, what do I look for? So, firstly, is when I see a treatment, I want to know, I want in my head that to see the ad.
Mm.
So, from the grade to the sound to the edit to just how it's put together, how it's presented, I want to be able to go close my eyes and I get it, I see it,
Yeah.
clearly. Oftentimes, directors can get bogged down in some detail or this or that, and it can feel a little bit disjointed, and I walk out going, I'm not 100% clear on what this ad is gonna look like. So there's that. There's also a little bit of bravery on the director's part. So sometimes what I really enjoy is when you throw the script back at it, or you tweak the script, or you say, "Oh, I saw this bit, but it doesn't really work. I think here's a better solution." So
Okay.
sometimes it's really nice when someone comes in with a perspective where they've really invested, they've really studied the script, or the board you've given them, and then they have like a view on it, and a view that is their sort of, they've injected themselves into it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that goes a long way. And then of course, like, you can't deny the commercials. So, you can have this beautiful treatment, but it's like 2 million over budget, and it's just like, well, this is going to be very hard to
Yeah.
this is going to be very hard to sell through. You know what I mean? So that becomes like a sticky point. And lastly, the production house. The production support is key to whatever job that you're doing. So a reputable, reliable, trusted production house goes a long way.
So, lastly, what role do you believe African creatives and African soundscapes can play on the global stage, and what needs to happen for that potential to be fully realized?
So when we started Odd Number, one of our mantras was to reclaim the African aesthetic, and I think that's all encompassing. So that's essentially, Africans coming to the fore, finding our voices, being empowered to make creative decisions. We need more African leaders as creatives. We need, more clients that appreciate the fabric and the textures of this continent. We also need more collaboration between each other. So nothing gives me more joy. I think the Luries has been so cool for me because I get to meet people from Kenya, people from Nigeria, and various countries, other creatives, and we've gotten to know each other really well. And the opportunities to collaborate are so high right now. We're just waiting for the right clients and the right times. But also, once you break those, it is, at some point it felt like South Africa advertising was just Joburg and Cape Town. But I think, one of the things we'd always say is we'd sooner get an office in Nairobi than in Cape Town. Just philosophically, because I think it's quite important to, there's so much texture, there's so much, for instance, one of the things I've always loved is the non-English category in the Luries, and purely because we've got 11 languages, and 95% of all the work we do is in one.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a that's such a pity, because there's so much more texture in a lot of the other languages and how they're used. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm answering your question in the sense that there's just so much to use. It's just the confidence, the creative confidence to reach in there, bring it to the table, and produce it beautifully,
Yeah.
and beautifully crafted. I think will put us on the world stage. I think it's very important to know that you can't compete with an American using an American voice.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just the copy.
Yes.
But you can bring yourself and your essence to the table, and compete at that level.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some beautiful work coming out of Thailand, for instance, which is very Thai in its essence that I've been looking at. And you just go, wow, this is so fresh.
Yeah.
So there's that opportunity. I think there's that window for us, and I think it's coming shortly.
I think it's so incredible that you have this African aesthetic,
Yeah.
and this these dreams to do this for Africa, and I just absolutely love that, because it is so important. And I think that you not only heading up the Odd Number with this ethos, as well as pushing it with the Lories, is definitely one of the most important voices. So thank you so much for sharing this with us. I'm so excited about seeing what you're going to do, in Africa, and it is. I mean, Africa is. I mean,
That's home.
It is the most amazing place.
Yeah.
And the whole world is actually seeing it.
100%.
So yeah, thank you for being that voice. I appreciate it. And with the hat voices.
Voices.
Perfect. Thank you, Sbu.
Awesome. Thank you.